Why did Grandpa leave everything to her? I blurted out, louder than I meant to. The words cracked through the kitchen like a dropped glass. The moment they left my mouth, I felt it, that irreversible shift. Some things, once spoken, cannot be taken back. Silence. Mom didn't look up from the sink. She just stood there, shoulders stiff, hands motionless in a basin of soapy water. The silence stretched so long I almost apologized. Then she said, barely above a whisper, because she's not his granddaughter. But you are. I blinked. My brain didn't process it right away. The sentence felt like it came from someone else. From another house. Another life. What? I managed. Mom finally turned. Her hands, dripping wet, left prints on the front of her jeans as she wiped them down. Her eyes weren't angry. They were tired. Old in a way that didn't come from age. You heard me, she said. You're his blood. But that's not why he wrote the will that way. I was shaking. Then why? She walked past me and grabbed the kettle, filling it with water like we were having a normal evening. Like she hadn't just shattered the foundation of my reality. Because blood doesn't equal trust, she said. And trust doesn't always belong where you think it should. The kettle clicked on. I stood frozen. We'd just gotten back from the lawyer's office. The will had been read in a room that smelled like paper and quiet disappointment. My grandfather's estate, his house, his antique books, his tools, the savings account he never spoke of, even the lake cabin, had all gone to one person. Mira. Not Mom. Not me. Not my brother Daniel. Not even his favorite nephew, Uncle Theo. Mira, my cousin. Or not? The same Mira who came to live with us when she was 10, after her parents disappeared during a hiking trip that made national news for about 5 minutes. The police gave up. My family didn't talk about it much. Just, one day she was ours. The girl who never really fit. Who watched people more than she spoke to them. Who read books in strange alphabets and claimed she didn't remember where they came from. Mira, who used to stand at Grandpa's old oak tree and whisper to it like it could hear her. She's not his granddaughter? I asked again, louder. Then who is she? Mom didn't answer. She didn't even flinch. I wanted to scream. That night, I couldn't sleep. My thoughts spun so hard they made my head hurt. I kept replaying the will. The way the lawyer said her name first. The way Mira didn't even blink when it happened, like she expected it. And the way Grandpa used to look at her, not with love, but with something heavier. Like obligation. Or guilt. At 2:12 a.m., I heard footsteps in the hallway. Soft. Barefoot. Uneven. They stopped just outside my door. I froze. Waited. My hand hovered over my phone. Then a voice, female, breathy and strange, said, "He left it to me because I remember." I flung the door open. The hallway was empty. Except for one thing. Myra's bedroom door was open wide. And she was nowhere to be seen. I stood in the hallway, heart pounding, waiting for something, anything to move. To breathe. To explain. But nothing did. Myra's door hung open like a pulled tooth. Her room was lit only by the soft orange of her Himalayan salt lamp. It cast everything in hues of twilight, soft, warm, and utterly wrong. Her bed was made. Perfectly. Untouched. I stepped inside. There were no posters on her walls. No clutter. No makeup or scattered books or earbuds tangled in frustration. Only a single, thick-bound journal on her desk and a mirror that had been turned to face the wall. I whispered her name. Mira? No answer. Her window was closed. The lock unlatched, but untouched. I checked the closet, empty. Not even dust. It was like she'd stepped out of her body and left nothing behind but the shape of her. Back in the hallway, I listened again. Silence. I barely slept that night. When morning came, Mira was in the kitchen, eating cereal like nothing had happened. Wearing the same clothes she wore the day before. Her hair was wet. "Did you go out last night?" I asked, careful. She blinked. "No. I heard you talking outside my room." I didn't say anything. She didn't even lie with conviction. Just stated it like a weather report. Emotionless. Uninvested. I sat across from her, watching her chew with mechanical rhythm. Where were you when they read the will? I asked. Outside. You didn't seem surprised. Why would I be? I blinked. Because Grandpa left you everything. She looked up at me then, finally. And for a second, just one, I saw something in her eyes. Not pride. Not confusion. Something older. Like her body was a borrowed suit and someone else was watching from behind it. He told me I would, she said. A long time ago. That's not possible. She didn't blink. I remember. There it was again. That word. Remember what? I demanded. But she had already turned back to her bowl, letting the conversation rot between us. Later that day, I searched the attic for old photo albums. I needed to see something. Proof. A crack in the story. Anything. I pulled down boxes labeled Family 1980s, Vacation, and Misc. Mira didn't appear in any of them. Not one. No baby pictures. No birthday cakes. No candid shots of her chasing bubbles or opening presents. Her existence, as far as those albums were concerned, began abruptly at age 10, when she moved in after the accident. I pulled out an old VHS tape labeled Thanksgiving '98. I borrowed Mom's ancient player from the basement, dusted it off, and pressed play. We were all there. Grandpa carving the turkey. Uncle Theo making jokes. My mom holding baby Daniel. And Mira. Sitting in the corner. Not talking. Not smiling. Staring directly at the camera for the entire 32 minutes. Unblinking. Like she knew I'd be watching years later. I rewound the tape. Watched it again. There we all were, frozen in a warm, dated version of life. The grainy footage flickered slightly, warped at the edges like old memories do. Laughter, clinking cutlery, Daniel shrieking with joy over a whipped cream mustache. And in the corner, Mira. Still. She didn't touch her food. Didn't speak. Her gaze never shifted. Never blinked. For 32 entire minutes. No one in the footage addressed her. Not once. I paused the video and stared at the TV screen. Her face was just off-center, dark eyes half obscured by a blur of movement, but her stare pinned straight through the screen. Right at me. I turned the TV off. That night, I dreamed of her. She stood at the foot of my bed, silent, hair wet again. She didn't move. Just looked. And when I finally worked up the courage to ask what she wanted, she said in a voice older than time. He gave it to me. Because you weren't supposed to remember. I jolted awake, heart racing, soaked in sweat. The room was cold. Too cold. And the door to my closet closed when I fell asleep, now stood wide open. I didn't sleep again. The next morning, I found Mom in the garden, trimming the hedge with unnecessary aggression. She didn't look up when I approached. I need to know who Mira really is, I said. She sighed like I was asking her to tear open old wounds she'd stitched closed with barbed wire. She's complicated, she finally muttered. Her parents weren't who you think. They weren't who we thought, either. What does that mean? Mom stopped trimming. They were part of something. Something that was supposed to stay buried. I waited, but she didn't continue. You mean, like a cult? She flinched, just a little. I didn't say that. I swallowed. Then what was it? She finally turned to me, her face pale, sunken. There are people, groups, who believe memory is more than a record. That it's a key. A trigger. That some bloodlines carry doors inside them. I didn't understand. Doors to what? To before. She returned to the hedge without another word. I went back inside and found Mira in the living room, leafing through an old photo album I hadn't seen before. It was bound in red leather. No label. Where did you get that? I asked. She looked up at me, calm as ever. It was always here. You just didn't see it. She flipped to a page and turned the album toward me. There was a photo of Grandpa holding a baby. A baby I didn't recognize. That's not me, I said. I know, she replied. It's me. Before. Before what? Before I was in this shape. I laughed, nervous, brittle. What is that even supposed to mean? But she didn't answer. She just slid the album toward me. And I noticed, for the first time, something odd. Every photo of Mira, her shadow was missing. I ran my fingers along the photo page. Smooth. Glossy. Real. But the images were wrong. In every one, Mira stood alone, her body facing the camera, her face either turned or too softly focused to register fully. And behind her, nothing. No shadow. Not even on sunny days, not even in snow. Photoshop, I muttered, trying to keep my mind grounded. Or the angle. Or the lighting. Mira didn't respond. She watched me calmly, like she knew I was grasping at explanations too small for the question. "Where did you say you found this?" I asked again. "In the attic," she replied. "No, I was in the attic 2 days ago. I opened every box." She tilted her head. "Then maybe it found you now because it wanted to be found." I stared at her. "What are you talking about?" She stood, the photo album still open in front of me. "He kept it hidden from you because he thought you weren't ready." "Grandpa?" She nodded. "Ready for what?" Her expression didn't change, but her voice dropped a note in pitch, not emotion, just tone. As though shifting keys in a song. "For what we were," she said. "Before the names. Before the walls and rooms and dinners." I laughed, a dry, panic sound. "You mean before you moved in? Before your parents disappeared?" "Those weren't my parents." I blinked. "Excuse me." She sat back down, calmly folding her hands in her lap. "They were the last ones to hold me. That's all. But I was never theirs." I stood, backing away a step. "This isn't funny." "I'm not joking," she said, serene. "They didn't disappear. They released me." I felt the walls of the room shift, not literally, but in meaning. Like the house had been watching us talk, and now it was, listening closer. "That's not real. That's not a thing," I said. "You're just confused. You're just weird. That's all." "Do you remember the cabin?" she asked. My heart skipped. Grandpa's cabin. The one he left to Mira in the will. The one I hadn't visited since I was a kid. I vaguely remembered a dusty wood smell, pine trees, a cellar with a heavy door. "Barely," I said. "Because he made sure you wouldn't," she replied. "What?" Mira stood and walked to the bookshelf, pulling down a thick, hardback journal that looked handmade. The cover had a spiral carved into it, not drawn. Carved. She opened it and turned to a page near the center. There were entries written in the same shaky cursive as Grandpa's will. Dates stretching back years. Names. Symbols. Notes in different inks. And on one page, my name. Written 3 times. Each with a different birth date beside it. I stared at her. "What is this?" She smiled slightly. "The real will." I backed away. This wasn't grief. This wasn't trauma. This was something older, and it had been sitting at our kitchen table every morning, drinking orange juice in silence. "You think you're some kind of reincarnated priestess or something?" I snapped, voice shaking. "I don't think," she said. "I remember." And as she turned the book again, I saw the last page. A photo had been taped to it. It was a photo of me. As a child. Standing beside Grandpa. And Mira. But the timestamp read 1974. My brain did a double take. That was 15 years before I was born. "It's fake," I said, but the words came out thin, hollow. Even as I said them, I felt something in my gut twist. Not a logical rejection. A visceral one. The kind that comes from the part of you that knows when something isn't quite right, because it is. I reached for the photo, fingers trembling. The edges were yellowed, brittle. Not edited, not digital. It was a real photograph, the kind you'd get from a darkroom. The kind you can't fake without intent. The child that looked like me, was me, stood in a winter coat beside Grandpa, holding hands. Behind us stood Mira, older than both of us, with the same expression she wore now. Serene. Distant. Like she already knew what would happen next. "There's no way this is real," I whispered. "You keep saying that," Mira replied softly, "but you haven't asked the only question that matters." I looked up at her. "Which is?" She closed the book with a slow, final sound. "Why don't you remember?" The room felt colder. "I was born in 1989, I said. She smiled, but it wasn't cruel. It was tired. "So you were told." I backed away. "I'm done." "You're insane." "You're waking up," she corrected. I stormed out of the room, the journals still open behind me. But as I reached the hallway, a memory, sharp, sudden, hit me like a blow to the head. A snowy path. A small hand gripping mine. The cabin. A man's voice whispering, "Don't look in the mirror." Not yet. And then a scream. My scream. I froze. I had never remembered that before. Outside, the wind picked up. Trees creaked. I stood motionless in the hallway, one hand on the banister, trying to calm my breath. "You okay?" Daniel's voice startled me. My younger brother stood at the foot of the stairs, earbuds out, holding a half-eaten sandwich. "Yeah, I lied." "Weird dream." He shrugged. "You should come see this. Mom's going through Grandpa's old boxes in the garage. She found something off." I followed him down, legs shaky, brain still spiraling. The garage was a chaos of half-unpacked boxes and dust motes swirling in golden light. Mom knelt beside a wooden crate lined with blankets. She looked up when she saw me. Her face was pale. "What is it?" I asked. She lifted something wrapped in oilcloth and slowly, carefully unwrapped it. A mirror. Oval-shaped, framed in tarnished brass. Etched into the rim was the same spiral from Myra's journal. I stepped back instinctively. Mom whispered, "This was hidden in the attic of the cabin. We brought it here in '99. I'd forgotten all about it." Mira stepped into the garage just then, as if summoned. She didn't look surprised. Instead, she walked directly to the mirror, touched the glass with one fingertip, and whispered something I didn't understand. And the mirror, it clouded. Not like fog. Like memory. A face swam into view. Not mine. Hers. A younger Mira. Crying. Trapped behind the glass. The image in the mirror rippled, like water disturbed by breath. Then it cleared again. Myra's face, the one inside, was different. Not older. Not younger. Just tired. She looked directly at me. I stumbled back, my spine colliding with a metal shelf. Mom didn't move. She just stared, as if she was watching a memory resurface rather than a ghost appear. Her face looked like she wanted to explain something, but didn't know where to begin. "Mira," I whispered, eyes flicking between the girl in the garage and the one in the glass, "is that?" "It's me," Mira said softly, her voice detached. "A piece of me. A moment of me." "What does that mean?" "Not everything we are exists at once," she replied. "Some parts are held. Some are stored." "In a mirror?" "In that mirror," she corrected. "It was made for that purpose. Memory containment. Temporal restraint. He made it before he died." "Grandpa?" She nodded. I turned to Mom, desperate for sanity. "Did you know any of this?" Her eyes brimmed with something. "Guilt? Fear? Recognition?" "I knew your grandfather was different," she said. "But he tried to protect us. He didn't want it passed down." "Didn't want what passed down?" Mom hesitated. "The gift." Mira scoffed softly, not unkindly. "It was never a gift. It was a tether. A recall function." My throat tightened. "To what?" Mira looked at me then, really looked. And something passed through her eyes. A flicker of mourning. "You don't remember what you were," she said. "But you feel it. You've felt it since you were little. The moments that didn't make sense. The dreams that weren't yours." I said nothing, but something inside me recoiled in silent agreement. You always saw through people, even when you didn't know why. You knew when someone was lying or hiding something. You'd say strange names in your sleep. Names no one taught you. My mind flashed. Childhood journals Mom kept, pages filled with strange doodles and phrases I didn't understand. One entry I'd once written, age 6. I was the wrong version again. That had terrified me when I found it years later. Mira walked to the mirror and pulled back her hand. The surface returned to its silver sheen, blank and ordinary again. She turned to face me. "He tried to lock it away in the cabin," she said. "But mirrors remember. They always do. Especially the ones made to hold." I crossed my arms, needing some control. "Why me? Why this family? What's the point?" Mira tilted her head, just slightly. "Because you remembered once," she said. "And forgetting doesn't erase it. It only delays the return." Outside, the wind picked up. The garage door rattled slightly in its frame. Mom finally stepped forward, placing a hand on my arm. "He chose you, you know," she said. "In the end. He thought you'd be strong enough to break it." "Break what?" Mira answered this time. The cycle. The recursion. The loop of selves. My skin prickled. I'm not anyone's chosen anything, I whispered. Mira gave a sad smile. You were, once. In another mirror. Suddenly, the mirror flickered again. Not from light. From within. A new face surfaced, not mine, not Myra's, but close. Related. A girl with my features, but not me. And she spoke just 3 words. Don't trust reflection. Then she was gone. The face in the mirror vanished as suddenly as it had appeared. But the words clung to the air like fog. Don't trust reflection. I turned to Mira, pulse racing. What does that mean? Was that me? She shook her head. No. Not this you. I nearly laughed. There's only one me. Her gaze didn't waver. That's what you've been told. I looked to Mom for sanity again, but her eyes had that same glassy sheen, like the foundation of her own reality had been slowly eroded for years, and now there was nothing left to stand on. How long have you known? I asked her. She hesitated. I knew when you turned 10. What happened when I turned 10? She swallowed. You started forgetting. The words hit harder than they should have. I had forgotten things around that time. Moments, images, entire weeks. At first, everyone chalked it up to stress. Growing pains, they said. Kids go through weird phases. But I remembered now one particular day. I was outside, chasing bubbles, and then suddenly I wasn't. I was in the basement. Alone. Cold. Holding something. A mirror shard. My hands were bleeding. I had no memory of how I got there. None. Until now. I looked back at the mirror in the garage, suddenly certain that it held more than just reflections. More than just memories. It held entries. Versions. And one of them, one that looked like me, had tried to warn me. Why now? I asked. Why is all this happening now? Because the will was read, Mira said. And that was the signal. For what? She looked at Mom. For the next cycle. My mother flinched. You didn't tell her? Mira asked her softly. She's not ready. She has to be. She's already in it. I don't want this. I shouted. Both of them turned to me with identical expressions, part sympathy, part inevitability. That's what the last you said, Mira murmured. That shut me up. You keep saying cycle, I said. What does that mean? Mom sat down heavily on an overturned crate. Our family, we're not like others. I gathered that. She didn't smile. There's a pattern that repeats. A lineage. Certain people, not all, just a few, inherit more than just genes. They inherit memory. Real memory. From lives that never technically happened. Or happened before. I shook my head. That's not how memory works. You can't inherit events. But you can inherit doors, Mira whispered. And when they open, everything on the other side starts to leak through. And Grandpa? Mom nodded. He carried it longer than anyone. He was the last full keeper. He built protections. Fail-safes. He made the will a test. I stared. A test? Mira stepped forward again, holding out the red journal. You passed it. Because when everything was stripped away, you still questioned. You still searched. That means the mirror recognized you. And so did she. The girl in the glass? No, Mira said. The first. I felt my heart skip. The first what? The first version of you who remembered everything. The one who buried the original mirror before the cabin was ever built. My head spun. And where is she now? Mira handed me a page from the journal. A map. One I didn't recognize until I did. It was the field behind Grandpa's cabin. And at the center of it, circled in red ink, was one word. Mine. We arrived at the cabin just before dusk. The trees were taller than I remembered. Or maybe I was smaller now, shrunk by the weight of knowing too much. The air had a damp stillness to it, not the calm kind, but the kind that feels like a held breath. Like the land itself was watching. Mira led the way, the red journal clutched to her chest. She hadn't spoken since the drive began. Mom followed behind me, one hand always brushing against the spiral pendant she now wore openly. I'd never seen it before, but it looked old. Ancient. We stopped at the edge of the field. I recognized it now, though not from memory. From feeling. This is where it started, Mira said. And where it repeats. The grass was high, dry, brittle beneath our feet. Crickets chirped, unaware of how many layers of time pressed into this soil. Mira knelt and placed the journal flat on the ground, turning to the final page. A symbol was scrawled there, not a word, not quite. A blend of spiral and eye and doorway. A key that wasn't meant to be understood by language. "Stand here," she told me, pointing to a spot marked mine. I hesitated. "What's going to happen?" She looked up at me. "That depends on which version of you comes forward." I laughed nervously. "That's comforting." But I stepped into the circle. Nothing happened. No lightning. No voices. Just silence. And then I felt it. A pressure inside my chest. Not pain, weight. Familiar weight. Like a thought I'd been trying not to think my entire life was finally being thought. Mira began to chant softly, no words I recognized, just a rhythm. A pulse. Mom stood at the perimeter of the field, arms crossed tightly, her jaw trembling. And then, the ground beneath me sighed. A puff of air rose from the soil. Cold. It smelled like metal and memory. I stumbled, and my foot struck something hard beneath the dirt. I knelt and began to dig, the soil loose, almost cooperative. It didn't take long to find it. A box. The same size and shape as the one in the basement. Only older. Covered in a black cloth that felt like dried skin. My hands trembled as I pulled it out. There was no lock. Just a seam. I looked at Mira. She nodded once. I opened it. Inside wasn't an object, not in the usual sense. It was a mirror. But it didn't reflect me. It reflected her. The first. She looked maybe 20. Brown hair, sharp eyes. She wore the pendant my mother now had. Her expression was calm. Focused. And she spoke, though her mouth didn't move. The words echoed in my mind. I left this for myself. For when I forgot. My breath caught. They said we could break it, she continued. But we never do. We just become the next watcher. The next container. I looked at Mira. What is this? She whispered, your origin. Your inheritance. Your exit. The woman in the mirror raised a hand, touching her reflection, my reflection, and in that instant, I saw everything. Every version of me. Every time I had stood in this field. Every time I had dug up this box. Every time I had decided whether to remember or to forget again. A loop. A loop. A loop. I screamed. The sky shifted. The light turned inside out. And the mirror went black. When the mirror went black, the world didn't end. But it did tilt. The trees no longer stood in place. They leaned, listening. The stars above weren't where they used to be. I could feel it, the rearrangement. The cycle was shifting, rebalancing, preparing to rewrite itself once again. And I was still standing in the center. Mira knelt beside the mirror, her eyes wide but not surprised. She looked at me like I'd finally come home. What did you see? She asked. I couldn't answer. My mouth worked, but no sound came. Because I hadn't just seen. I had remembered. Everything. The first version of me, she hadn't been the beginning. She'd been the first to resist. The first to say enough. And when she failed, she buried what she knew, encoded it in symbols, sealed it in mirrors, left instructions only a future self would understand. And I was that self. You know what has to happen now, Mira said quietly. No, I whispered. Yes, she said. You have to choose. The same choice every version of you made. To forget. To protect. But I don't want to be her. I don't want to be the next container. Myra's expression didn't change. Then break it. I looked at the mirror. Still black. Still pulsing slightly, like a heart under glass. If I break it, I said, what happens to everything inside? Mira paused. That's the thing, she said. No one ever has. My fingers curled into fists. In the silence that followed, I could hear the wind press against the trees like a warning. Mom stepped forward then, her face drawn. I was given the same choice, she said. I turned to her. You remembered too? She nodded, tears in her eyes. For a while. Then I chose to forget. I chose you instead. My breath caught. All the strange moments, I whispered. The things you wouldn't explain. I didn't want this for you, she said. But the mirror chooses. When it's time, it always does. Mira placed the journal back into the box. You can leave it buried, she said. You can walk away. You'll forget slowly, but it'll happen. Or, you can remember forever. And carry it. All of it. The history. The loop. The knowing. I looked down at the mirror. And for a moment, just a flicker, I saw something else. A future me. Old. Alone. Watching another girl dig in this same field. And I said to her, don't trust reflection. The words had always been mine. The warning was from me. I knelt and touched the glass. It didn't ripple. It cracked. A web of silver veins spread across the surface, thin and trembling. Then, it shattered. The sound was like a scream held for centuries finally released. Wind howled through the field, the earth trembled, and the pendant around Mom's neck burst into sparks. Then, silence. The mirror was dust. Mira stood slowly, her expression unreadable. You broke it, she whispered. Did I end it? She stared at the box. I don't know. I looked up at the stars. They were in their rightful place again. I remember, I said softly. But I'm not her anymore. No, Mira agreed. You're something new. We buried the box again. But this time, it was empty. No mirror. No journal. Just soil and sky. On the drive home, Mom held my hand like I was a child again. Like something fragile had finally been released. Maybe it had. Or maybe it was just waiting. Because mirrors don't forget. Even when you do.